Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure most of you have heard by now, Savannah Marshall and Chantel Cameron are the latest Valkyries to join the MVP stable. I'm not surprised. I was talking about this just the other day, that I felt that Chantel would eventually end up over there, and Savannah. Britain's Savannah Marshall and Chantel Cameron have signed promotional agreements with MVP. The 33-year-old Marshall had expected to feature on the undercard of the boxer promotion of Lauren Price's unification bout with Natasha Jonas in March, but hasn't fought since a majority decision win at Super Middle over Franchone Cruz in July of 2023. And we know that Savannah and her team were not happy about that they went as far as calling Savannah down to the kickoff press conference just for Savannah to find out they hadn't secured her opponent. Chantel Cameron, 32, has long sought a decisive third fight with Katie Taylor after inflicting her first defeat and suffering her first defeat in their rematch. She most recently fought in November when outpointing Patricia Bergult of Sweden. Ireland's Taylor, incidentally, fights Amendia Serrano for a third time on July 11th on an MVP promotion. I'm delighted to say I'm now part of MVP, who more than any other promoter recognize the value that women bring to this sport, Marshall said. Through Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian, they also have a very unique, refreshing approach to the fight game. They think outside of the box, they're different, and boxing overall benefits from such trailblazers and original thinkers. I added that last bit to it because so many of the established promoters and the established boxing people have a way of doing things that becomes mundane over time. Just too much of the same thing for too long, whereas MVP is new and sexy, like a slutty next-door neighbor or a pizza with pineapples on it. It's an exciting time to join their team alongside so many other accomplished female fighters. As a two-weight world champion and previously achieving undisputed champion status, it only feels natural to be here, and I cannot wait to begin fighting under their banner. Cameron had fought under the Queensberry Promotions banner after previously being promoted by Matchroom. She joins at MVP Ellie Scottney, also of Britain, who recently left Matchroom. Alicia Baumgartner, who also recently left Matchroom. So does this herald Matchroom's exit from the women's game? I don't think so, because Matchroom recently made a big signing of their own that we're going to talk about in another video. They actually signed 2 new unbeaten fighters, so they're not out of the women's game so much as updating their stable, as MVP capitalizes on the work they've already put into the career of Ellie Scottney, into the career of Chantel Cameron and Alicia Baumgartner. Every title fight those fighters have ever had has been on Matchroom, their biggest fights to date. I'm very excited about this move, Cameron said. MVP has been nothing but encouraging in talks regarding myself and female boxing. This is a fantastic opportunity for the next stage of my career, and an unbelievable platform to showcase my boxing ability. I'd like to thank Nikisa Badarian, Jake Paul, and the whole MVP team for making this whole transition very easy for me. Savannah Marshall and Chantel Cameron are world-class athletes who represent the best of women's boxing and the proud tradition of UK champions, read a statement released on behalf of Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian, the co-founders of MVP. Like fellow MVP-promoted fighters Amanda Serrano and Alicia Baumgartner, Savannah and Chantel have reached the pinnacle of the sport by becoming undisputed champions, giving them the experience, perspective, and platform to lead the next generation. We look forward to announcing their MVP debuts in the coming weeks. I look forward to watching them. As MVP promoted fighters, they have the opportunity to not just box on DAZN, which many of them have already, but also box on Netflix, because MVP works with both platforms.
More exposure.
And a different set of eyes than your conventional boxing audiences. Jake Paul's unique ability to draw attention to himself, not just from people in boxing, but people outside of that world.
Thinking outside the box. You're only gonna get so far trying to appeal to your conventional boxing fans. Jake appeals to a younger generation, which is something that boxing has difficulty with as of late.
And we will get into the specifics of Chantel's trajectory, Savannah's trajectory, and what we can expect MVP to do for them. My initial reaction is that MVP now has the very best stable of Valkyries, the very best of the best women boxers, a better stable even than Matchrooms, a better stable than Boxers, certainly more than Queensberry. They were never that invested to begin with.
Better than Top Ranks and better than Golden Boys. Deeper and more robust across more weight classes. Fighters anywhere in between super flyweight to as high as super middle.
This is going to sound strange, but MVP has to now be careful to not keep branding it women's boxing so much as boxing. That the boxing audience, the people you're trying to sell these fighters to, they don't want to be sermonized to. When they tune into a fight, it's to watch two people beat the hell out of each other, and it really is that simple. Don't get away from that.
Don't make it sound like a charity, and don't make it sound like a cause.
Don't virtue signal and keep it simple. If you told a couple of guys that there's two broads fighting outside and they're really going at it, they're gonna go look. But if you preach to them that they should watch it, they should want to watch it because they're women, well, you're gonna elicit a different reaction, because people don't like being told what to do, least of all when it comes to entertainment. Many pitfalls we've seen from Disney in recent years and all of their woke imagery, their woke messages.
How much money has that costed them? MVP has to be careful now that they have the best stable in women's boxing to not make that same mistake. Don't try to give people a message, just give them good fights. And you can with this stable.
They might offer one guy that wins an Olympic medal something, but there are loads of fighters that come out of the amateurs every year and are starving. There are loads of managers that are buying fights to get wins in Mexico and in Colombia and all other bizarre places against guys that are losing every other week just to build up people's records. That doesn't help the sport.
No.
I mean, everyone's UFC sucks. They don't pay their stars. First of all, what do you care what stars are getting paid? Motherfucker, you're not a star. Here's what UFC is doing, though. They have a middle class. They have people that are making a living fighting. Like 95% of the people in boxing who are actively boxing can't make a living.
It's true.
It's handfuls of guys that are getting wealthy. UFC, part of the reason their economic model as a business works better is because they have a working class fighter. They have professional fighters being paid like professional athletes. Maybe they're not getting rich overnight, but they have a much healthier middle class than boxing has.
Good point. Yeah.
And that middle class is what is going to allow Dana and Nick to build something.
I'm going to go a step further than Lou Dibella did, because there are some people out there that don't like the idea that Dana White is going to bring over his UFC model into boxing. It's a lot more localized, what we're talking about.
That's established now in spite of the wild speculations people ran with when first hearing that Dana and Nick Khan and Turkey LL Sheikh were working on a league. This is a lot smaller, and that's what I told you it would be.
The people had all sorts of crazy ideas about what this was going to mean for the entirety of the sport of boxing, Lou Dibella among them.
When it's a lot more localized, but still, there are people out there that are against Dana White bringing his ideas and his way of doing things into boxing. What they don't want is structure. What they don't want is a status quo.
They don't want regulation. They want boxing to stay unregulated, which is funny because there are so many fingers in this pie that makes up boxing. For it to be as unregulated as it is, it's basically the wild, wild west of businesses, and there were people in it that wanted to stay that way.
Why?
So that every 2-bit fighter with 2 gloves and a gum shield can ask for the moon and the stars when they know they're not worth that, they don't generate that.
The Normans.
So they don't want somebody coming in and bringing over a standard, a status quo. Now think about how inconsistent boxing is at every level. The sanctioning bodies and what they mandate, what they don't.
What fights they order and what fights they don't. What gets rewarded in a fight. The same thing that wins a guy a fight in one fight could be the exact same thing that loses a guy a fight in another fight.
It's inconsistent. The way the business is run, the way that fights are scored.
It's inconsistent.
It isn't regulated, and there are people that want it to stay that way, whereas Dana White would bring over a bit more structure, at least to his TKO, his corner of the boxing sphere.
A standard.
A couple of weeks ago, we got a glimpse at what could be the pay scale for the fighters that fight under that banner, and it wasn't half bad, but there are still people out there that are going to resist that idea because they want to reserve the right to ask for the moon and the stars when they know they don't deserve that, they know they don't earn that, they don't generate it. It doesn't make for a sustainable business.
6-figure fighters with 7-figure expectations.
Inundating the market with box office fight after box office fight in order to try and satisfy their demands, simultaneously making fights, it's hurt the market. I'm gonna say what Lou Dibella didn't. The fighters these days have a little bit too much autonomy.
Too much choice. To where they end up wasting your time and mine and their own.
Decline of boxing in the American market has a direct correlation with the fighters having too much say-so, too much of a choice, too many opportunities to waste, too much time.
Too many guys that already think they're a business. Too many fighters that think they're already a franchise when they can't sell out a wing dinner.
That if Dana White now means to bring over at least a piece of his UFC's structure and standardization, if nothing else, I'm curious. Let's see what it does. Let's see how it goes. Because boxing has become far too unstable in this market particularly.
What it resembles is a bunch of guys taking a day off from work to play scratch-offs at the 7-Eleven. They all think they're gonna hit it big.
They all want to win the sweepstakes to the point where you're not actually doing your job. Your job is to entertain an audience, generate interest, and generate money with the fights that you have, whereas you want to play it so safe for so long.
You can't, because you keep waiting to hit the lottery.
Brian Norman is off to Japan to fight Jin Suzuki in a fight that most Americans don't know about when he could be fighting Boots here.
In a fight they would know about. In a fight they might actually be interested in, and it's because he's the kind of guy I'm talking about. You're waiting to hit the lottery.
Let's condense it. There's enough irregulation in boxing already that Dana White coming over and trying to bring over some kind of a structure, it might not be a bad idea.
On a small scale, it's worth a try. One they can control. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel or revolutionize boxing, just do their own thing with their own brand. And I'm not against it.
Let's see how it goes. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, the continued fallout of Ryan Garcia's upset loss to Rolly Romero. How can Ryan Garcia fulfill his potential?
Well, that really depends on what his potential is. How high is his ceiling?
Ryan Garcia has the potential to be one of the best boxers, so how can he redeem himself following his latest loss? Garcia suffered a unanimous decision defeat to Rolando Romero this month. It was the first fight since his no-contest win against Devin Haney, after seeing that win overturned once he failed VADA tests for Osterin. Ryan was dropped in the second round by Romero's left hook, as he never wanted to trade after that moment. Ryan must tighten up his defense, as he has been dropped several times in the second round, whether it's by Luke Campbell or Gervonta Davis or more recently, Rolly Romero.
He's got weaknesses. Garcia suffered like this against Luke Campbell, Gervonta, and Rolly. While he got up to stop Campbell, against elite-level names, Ryan went missing. Tank dropped Ryan with a counter left hook in the second round before stopping him with a body shot in the seventh. Romero made Garcia second-guess himself when he countered Ryan Garcia's left hook with his own before coasting to a win. Ryan tends to drop his right hand and lean backwards, which leaves him open.
So they're approaching this from a nuts and bolts kind of perspective, X's and O's, that Ryan drops his right and leans back in a straight line, which leaves him open to get caught. Perhaps he does it because he was very tall for a 135-pounder and tall for a 140-pounder.
Jared Anderson has the same problem at heavyweight. It's the byproduct of facing so many fighters that are smaller than you are. You do that enough, you can get away with it most of the time.
Because the guys are so much smaller than you are, with smaller arms, less reach, they really can't get to you. But sooner or later, it becomes a deficiency.
A defensive deficiency that creates a gaping hole over time.
Garcia must also vary up his shots. Ryan has spoken about the power in his right hand previously. He demonstrated this in the Oscar Duarte fight. He rocked Duarte with his right hand before using his left to finish the job, in arguably the best win of his career. Garcia has developed a reputation for being a one-trick pony by simply having that left hook, making him more predictable.
He is a one-trick pony without his Oster, and he's a basic 1-2 fighter, jabbing a straight.
So much was made of his left hook and its effectiveness from what we saw in the Devin Haney fight, but what we also saw was a fighter on PEDs.
So perhaps the effectiveness of his left hook was being overstated, since without those PEDs, he didn't have the sharpness or the instincts, the timing to pull the trigger.
Without those PEDs, Ryan must also resolve his coaching situation. After the Davis loss, he decided to leave Joe Goosen. He joined Derek James for the Duarte and Haney fights. Ryan then switched back to Eddie Reynoso for the Romero fight, only for that to fall through. Reynoso was training Canelo for the William Skull fight, so Garcia could not get enough time to work on his game. He returned to Derek James, but it was not enough to get the win. Garcia must find a coach who can dedicate his time to sharpen his fundamentals if he wants to become a world champion.
But who told you he wants to become a world champion? Didn't you hear what he said years ago? He doesn't care about belts.
If he cared about belts and winning one and becoming a world champion, he would have made the weight for the Devin Haney fight. He didn't. He blew it deliberately for an advantage. So much of this conversation and the way this article is written relies on things that Ryan doesn't want.
Presuppositions.
And a mentality that Ryan Garcia doesn't have and has never exhibited. A level of discipline that we've never seen from him. So when you ask, can Ryan live up to his potential? This is his potential.
Which was always overstated, not based on his boxing ability, but his social media presence. That's what really brought him into the spotlight.
Not anybody that he fought, and not anybody that he beat. And so far, the crown jewel of his resume is a tainted victory over Devin Haney. So we're asking if he can live up to his potential has more to do with the journalists' overestimations of the fighter than the fighter himself, because we're not talking about an Olympic gold medalist here.
A silver medalist, a bronze.
We're talking about a boxer who became more popular for his social media account than his boxing. If Joe Goosen couldn't fix it, and Derek James and Eddie Reynoso, they couldn't fix it,
they couldn't either,
then it's not down to Ryan's team, it's down to Ryan. And all of these X's and O's that you're describing, what needs patching up, that is also down to Ryan and how hard he's willing to work, or how hard he isn't.
His potential.
I don't know what potential you're talking about aside from the overestimations of American journalists who put him on a pedestal before he even did anything.
If he had the potential to be a star, that has more to do with Instagram than boxing.
So maybe he should stick to that.